Hello and welcome to Solutions Architect Diary. To help you prepare for the exam, I have analyzed and broken down 15 practice tests into case scenarios you are likely to face. For every question we discussed today, we have a thorough explanation to ensure you understand the architectural principles behind the correct answers. So I'll be reading the question first, followed immediately by the answer, and recommend pausing the video after the question to test yourself before seeing the solution. So let's get straight into it. So, the first question is, a company serves paid video content to users globally. The videos are stored in an Amazon S3 bucket. The company must ensure that the S3 bucket is not publicly accessible and only authenticated paying users can download videos. The solution should minimize operational overhead while keeping latency low for global users. Which solution meets these requirements? As you can see, the correct answer is B. Why is this correct? Because origin access control allows the S3 bucket policy to permit access only from CloudFront, keeping the bucket private. Signed URLs cookies enforce pure user authorization at the edge with low global latency and minimal ongoing operations. The first answer is wrong because this typically leads to key management and rotation issues because an AM user's long-term credentials must be protected and managed. It also doesn't inherently prevent other distribution paths unless you tightly control how URLs are generated and distributed. The C option is wrong because the S3 static website endpoint doesn't support OAC or OAI based private access control in the same way as the REST endpoint, which complicates keeping the bucket fully private. This approach often results in either public exposure risk or additional custom enforcement layers. And the last option is wrong because EFC is not a content delivery service and would require compute to serve files, increasing cost and operational overhead. It also doesn't provide global edge caching like CloudFront, so latency would be worse for global users. The next one is a company runs workload in private subnets and currently routes all outbound traffic through a NAT gateway. The workload frequently read and write Amazon S3 and Amazon DynamoDB. The security team requires that traffic to these services must not traverse the public internet, and the finance team wants to reduce NAT gateway data processing costs. Which solution meets these requirements with the most cost saving? The correct answer is B. Why? Gateway endpoints keep S3 and DynamoDB traffic on the AWS network without requiring internet routing. Reducing exposure and improving security posture, they also eliminate a large portion of NAT gateway data processing charged for these destinations. The first is incorrect because NAT instances still route traffic to AWS public endpoints or the internet path unless you use private endpoints, and they add operational overhead for scaling and patching. They also can become a throughput bottleneck compared to NAT gateways. The C is incorrect because DynamoDB is supported via gateway endpoints, and interface endpoints are typically not the cost-optimal choice for DynamoDB access at high volume. For S3, gateway endpoints are generally the standard cost-effective pattern for private access from a VPC. And the last one is incorrect because Global Accelerator is used to improve ingress performance to applications, not to provide egress connectivity to AWS servers like S3 and DynamoDB. It will not remove the need for NAT or private endpoints for service access. The third one. A company hosts a critical application to Amazon EC2 instance in an auto-scaling group access to availability zones. The application uses an Amazon RDS. For MySQL database, the company requires automatic failover for the database with an RTO of less than 5 minutes and no manual intervention. Read scaling is not a requirement. Which solutions meet these requirements? The correct answer is A. Multi-AZ provides synchronous replication to a standby in a different availability zone and supports automatic failover. This is specifically designed for high availability with minimal operational effort and low RTO. The next one is B, and it's incorrect because read replicas are primarily for read scaling and they use asynchronous replication, and promotion is typically a manual or orchestrated action rather than automatic multi-AZ failover. This can increase RTO and operational complexity. The C option is incorrect because snapshot restore is a backup restore DR approach and doesn't meet a sub 5-minute RTO in most cases. It also requires manual steps to restore and redirect traffic. And the last one is incorrect because Antenna is an analytics query service and is not a transactional relation database replacement for an RDS-based application. This would require major application changes and wouldn't meet transactional requirements. The next one is a company runs a customer-facing API in US East first. The API uses Amazon Aurora MySQL and must remain available if an entire region becomes unavailable. The business requires an PRO of 1 minute and an RTO of 10 minutes. The company wants to list operational overhead for cross-region failover. Which solution meets these requirements? And the correct answer is C. Aurora Global Database is designed for low-latency cross-region replication and supports very low PRO, often measured in seconds. Allowing with a 1-minute PRO, Route 53 failover routing provides a managed domain name system-based mechanism to shift traffic with minimal operational overhead. The first one is incorrect because multi-AZ protects against availability zone failures, not full region outages. It doesn't satisfy a requirement to remain available if the entire region becomes unavailable. The answer B is incorrect because manual promotion increases operational burden and can jeopardize the 10-minute RTO if procedures are not executed quickly. It's also less automated and typically not the last ops approach compared to Aurora Global Database. And the last one is incorrect because daily snapshots cannot meet a 1-minute PRO, because data loss could be up to 24 hours. Snapshot restore also usually cannot guarantee a 10-minute RTO for a production database at scale. A company stores sensitive reports in an Amazon S3 bucket encrypted with SSE KMS using a custom managed key. A separate AWS account used by an external auditor must read and decrypt specific objects during an audit window. The company wants to use less privilege and avoid sharing long-term credentials. Which solution meets these requirements? The correct answer is C. SDS role assumption avoids long-term credentials and supports less privilege through a dedicated role and scoped policies. Updating the CMK key policy ensures that role can use KMS decrypt, and the bucket policy ensures S3 access is permitted. The first one is incorrect because KMS decryption requires explicitly permission on the CMK, and a bucket policy alone doesn't grant KMS decrypt. Without key policy or grant permissions, the auditor will receive access denied on decryption. The second one is incorrect because AWS KMS CMKs are not exportable in this manner, and key material export is not how cross-account decryption is achieved. This also introduces unnecessary key management complexity and doesn't align with KMS design. And the last is incorrect because this violates the requirement to protect sensitive reports and weakness the security posture. It also expands data exporter surface area and likely conflicts with compliance controls. A company processes payment events from multiple sources. For each customer, events must be processed in the exact order they were generated, and duplicate events must be avoided if a producer retries. The company wants a managed decoupling solutions with minimal custom code. Which solution meets these requirements? The correct answer is A. Amazon SQS FIFO first in first out quiz provide ordering within a message group, which satisfied per customer ordering when message group ID is set per customer. FIFO also supports deduplication over the configured deduplication interval, reducing duplicates from retries. The second one is incorrect because standard queues don't guarantee strict ordering and can deliver messages out of order. Visibility timeout doesn't provide deduplication, and a 0-second value would case immediate retries and duplicate processing. The C answer is incorrect because SNS is a PubSub service and doesn't guarantee strict ordering per customer across distributed subscribers. The duplication and ordering would need to be implemented by consumers, increasing complexity. And the last one, even breach, isn't incorrect because it's excellent for routing and filtering, but it doesn't guarantee strict per entity ordering across targets. You would still need an ordering mechanism downstream, which is exactly what FIFO SQS provides. Seventh question. A company uses Amazon DynamoDB to store IOT measurements. The current table uses partition key device type, and the company observes throttling and uneven partition utilization during peak times. Queries are typically for single device measurements over the last 24 hours. The company wants to reduce hot partitions and improve read-write scalability. Which change is the best solution? The correct answer is D. Device ID has much higher cardinality, distributing reads and writes across partitions more evenly and reducing hot partitions. The sort key enables efficient range queries for last 24 hours per device. The first one isn't correct because the hot partition issue is primarily caused by low cardinality partition keys, and a GCI doesn't fix the uneven write distribution on the base table. You may also shift the hotspot to the index depending on the access pattern. The next one isn't correct because increasing capacity can mask symptoms but doesn't address the root of case of uneven partition key distribution. The table can still hotspot and throttle even the higher total capacity. And the C1 is incorrect because these introduce operational overhead and change the persistent layer without directly addressing the DynamoDB key design problem. Read replicas help read scaling in relation database, but not solve IOT write hotspotting in DynamoDB. A company suspects what an IAM policy change caused multiple Amazon EC2 instances to lose access to an Amazon S3 bucket. The security teams need to identify who made the change, from where, and when. Which AWS service provides the most direct evidence for this investigation? And the correct answer is B. CloudTrail records same API activity, including who performed actions, source IP, and timestamps. This provides the most direct audit trail for policy changes. The first one is incorrect because instance logs might show application errors, but they typically don't provide authoritative records for IAM policy change events. They also don't reliably identify the human or role that made the change. The C1 is incorrect because config can show that a resource configuration changed and may provide a timeline, but it's not the primary source for who did it. Details like source IP and API caller identity. CloudTrail is the authoritative API audit log. And the last one is incorrect because flow logs capture network traffic metadata and not IAM configuration changes. They can help troubleshoot connectivity but cannot identify IAM policy modifications. A company has on-premise servers connected to a VPC through AWS site-to-site VPN. The servers must call the AWS System Manager API privately without using the public internet. The company created an interface VPC endpoint for SSM and enabled private DNS, but the on-premise servers still resolve the SSM hostname to public IP addresses. Which solution fixes this with the less operational overhead? And the correct answer is B. Resolver inbound endpoints allow on-premises clients to resolve AWS servers' private DNS names to the interface endpoint private APs. This keeps traffic private over the VPN and avoids per host hacks. The first one is incorrect because hard-coding IP is brittle because interface endpoint IPs can change and are AZ specific. Disable private DNS also removes the standard host name mapping that simplifies client configuration. The C1 is incorrect because this routes to a public endpoint and doesn't meet the requirement to avoid the public internet. It also increases cost and adds unnecessary exposure. And the last one is incorrect because SSM is an API service that requires interface endpoints for private connectivity. An S3 gateway endpoint doesn't provide private access to SSM APIs. Even if SSM use S3 for some artifacts, the API calls still need SSM private endpoints. A company stores database credentials in AWS Secrets Manager and uses an Amazon RDS database in private subnets. The company requires automatic credential rotation every 30 days. The VPC has no internet ingress. Which design meets this requirement? C. Secrets Manager supports managed rotation workloads driven by Lambda, and placing the function in the VPC allows private access to the database. Interface endpoints enable private API calls without internet ingress. The first one is incorrect because this increases operational overhead and requires instance management and secure scheduling. It also doesn't leverage the managed rotation patterns built into Secrets Manager. The second is multi-AZ provides a high availability for the database, not secret rotation. Credential rotation is an identity and secret management function, not a database availability failure. And the last one is incorrect because rotating a KMSK doesn't rotate the secret value used by the database users. Storing credentials in S3 is not the intended pattern and increases the risk of misconfiguration and exposure. Company use AWS organizations with multiple accounts. The security teams want to ensure that the new resources can be created only in U Central 1 and U West 1, regardless of IAM permissions in member accounts, which solution enforces this requirement centrally. And the correct answer is D. Service control policies act as a permission guardrail that limits what IAM can allow in member accounts, denying outside the approved regions enforce and the requirement before resources are created. The first one is incorrect because detection and remediation are not the same as prevention, and deletion automation can be delayed or fail. This approach also requires additional tooling and doesn't guarantee enforcement at request time. The second one is incorrect because permission boundaries require consistent implementation across all identities and can be bypassed if not applied universally. Service control policies provide a central control that doesn't depend on per content discipline. And last one, C option, is incorrect because CloudFront geo-restriction controls content delivery based on viewer location, not AWS API regions. It doesn't prevent users from using AWS APIs in disallowed regions. A company needs to expose a microservices application that uses HTTP version 2 and gRPC to the internet. The company requires path-based routing, TLS termination, and integration with AWS WAF to protect against common web exploits. Which load balancing solutions meets this requirement? And the correct answer is A. Application Load Balancer supports layer 7 routing features like path-based routing and integrates cleanly with AWS WAF. It also supports TLS termination and can handle HTTP version 2 or gRPC patterns commonly tested in architecture scenarios. The B is incorrect because NLB, Network Load Balancer, operates at layer 4 and doesn't provide path-based routing. AWS WAF integrates with ALB, not directly with NLB in the way required for HTTP-aware inspection. The C is incorrect because this adds additional components and can be valid in some designs, but it's not the most direct fit when the requirement specifically calls for path-based routing and WAF at the load balancer layer. It also introduces higher operational and cost overhead than a direct ALB for simple exposure. The last one is incorrect because Global Accelerator improves network ingress performance but doesn't provide layer 7 features like path-based routing or WAF integration for HTTP inspection. Security groups cannot perform HTTP path routing. A company needs to transfer 400 terabytes of on-premise data to Amazon S3 within 10 days. The on-premise network link is limited to 200 Mbps and cannot be increased in time. The company wants to a reliable approach that meets the deadline. Which solution should be the company choose? And the correct answer is B. Snowball Edge is designed for large-scale offline data transfer when network bandwidth is limited. Shipping multiple devices in parallel can meet tight deadlines more reliable than constrained network transfer. The first one is incorrect because at 200 Mbps, transferring 400 terabytes in 10 days is generally not feasible due to throughput limits and protocol overhead. Data sync is excellent for online transfer, but it cannot overcome insufficient bandwidth. The C option is incorrect because transfer acceleration can improve performance over the internet, but it still depends on the customer's available outbound bandwidth. With a hard 200 Mbps cap, it cannot meet the 10 days target for 400 terabytes. And last one is not because storage gateway is suited for hybrid access patterns and incremental migration, not for a one-time bulk transfer with a strict deadline. It also relies on the same limited network link. A company has a fleet of Linux 2 instances across two availability zones that need to share the same POSIX compliant file system. The workload performs frequent small file reads and writes and requires automatic scaling and high availability. The company wants the least operational overhead. Which solutions meet these requirements? And the correct answer is C. EFS is a managed elastic POSIX compliant network file system designed for a shared access across instances and AZs. It provides high availability with minimal operational overhead. The first one is incorrect because S3 is object storage and doesn't provide full POSIX semantics, and fuse-based mounting can introduce compatibility and performance issues. This also increases operational risk due to reliance on third-party tooling. The B is incorrect because EBS volumes are typically attached to a single instance and they are not a shared file system. Periodic rsync introduces consistency gaps and operational complexity, and it doesn't provide real-time shared access. And the last one is incorrect because this increases operational overhead for patching, scaling, and ensuring high availability of the NFC server. It also introduces additional failures modes compared to the managed EFS service. And the last question, which you need to choose two options. A company must retain applications logs for 7 years for compliance. Logs are written daily but are rarely accessed for 30 days. When need logs must be retrievable with 12 hours, the company wants to minimize storage cost while meeting compliance requirements. Which two solutions meet these requirements? And the last correct answers are D and E. Deep Archive is designed for the lowest cost long-term retention when access is rare. Retrieval times can be planned to meet a 12-hour requirement depending on retrieval options and operational process. The last one is correct because object lock compliance mode enforce write once read many style retention to meet strict compliance controls against deletions or alteration. Combined with lifecycle transitions, it supports both regulatory retention and cost optimization. The first one is incorrect because S3 standard is not cost optimal for rarely accessed long-term retention. The requirement emphasizes minimizing cost and standard storage would be unnecessarily expensive over 7 years. The B option is incorrect because EBS snapshots are not intended as a primary long-term log archive system and can be more expensive and less directly queryable for log retention patterns. It also complicates lifecycle management compared to S3 policies. And the C is incorrect because CloudWatch logs can retain data, but it's typically not the most cost-effective choice for multi-year archival at large scale. S3 with archival classes is generally the standard pattern for low cost long retention. Thanks for watching. I replied to every single comment, so please let me know down below what I can improve in my preparation content. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I have a ton of useful content coming your way very soon. Have a nice day.